Ever wondered what it takes to hold a kingdom together when the world's greatest superpower wants to swallow you whole? For one woman, the answer was a brilliant mind, unmatched charm, and a willingness to risk it all. She seduced two of Rome's most powerful men and in the end, lost everything. This is the story of Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, and her final, desperate gamble for survival. Let's rewind the scroll. We're in the 1st century BC. Egypt is a shadow of its former glory, a wealthy but vulnerable kingdom caught in the crosshairs of a rapidly expanding Rome. Into this world of political turmoil is born Cleopatra VII. She wasn't just a pretty face, she was a polyglot, a brilliant strategist, and a direct descendant of Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's own generals. From a young age, she knew that her throne was precarious. Her own family was a nest of vipers, with siblings plotting against her. When she was just 18, she ascended the throne with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, but it was a partnership destined to fail. Her brother's advisors quickly turned against her, forcing her into exile. But Cleopatra was a survivor. She knew she needed an ally, a powerful one. And who was more powerful than the man who had just conquered Gaul and was now striding into Egypt? Julius Caesar. The story of their first meeting is legendary. Smuggled past her brother's guards, rolled up in a carpet, she was delivered right at Caesar's feet. It was a bold, theatrical move, and it worked. Caesar was captivated. He saw in her not just a damsel in distress, but a sharp, ambitious ruler who could be a valuable asset. He backed her claim to the throne, defeated her brother's forces, and reinstated her as the sole ruler of Egypt. Their alliance was sealed not just by politics, but by a genuine connection. They had a son together, Caesarion, whom Cleopatra hoped would one day unite the great empires of Rome and Egypt. For a moment, it seemed like her gamble had paid off. She had secured her throne and her kingdom's future. But fate is a fickle thing. In 44 BC, the unthinkable happened. Julius Caesar was assassinated on the floor of the Roman Senate. The daggers that struck him down also struck at the heart of Cleopatra's plans. Rome was plunged into a bloody civil war. Her protector was gone, and her position was once again uncertain. The Roman world was now split between two powerful figures, Caesar's adopted son, the cool and calculating Octavian, and Caesar's loyal general, the charismatic and impulsive Mark Antony. Cleopatra knew she had to choose a side, and she chose Antony. She arranged to meet him in Tarsus, and her entrance was even more spectacular than the one she made for Caesar. She sailed up the Cydnus River in a magnificent golden barge, dressed as the goddess Venus, surrounded by attendants. Antony, who saw himself as the embodiment of the god Dionysus, was completely enchanted. He had come to question her loyalty to Rome, but he left as her devoted ally and lover. Their connection was immediate and passionate. Unlike her pragmatic alliance with Caesar, her relationship with Antony seemed to be one of genuine love and shared ambition. They spent a winter together in Alexandria, a whirlwind of feasting and revelry. For them, it was more than a romance, it was a political and military partnership. Together, they dreamed of a new Eastern Empire, with Alexandria as its capital and their children as its heirs. Antony officially married Cleopatra, even though he was already married to Octavian's sister back in Rome, a massive political and personal insult. This act gave Octavian the perfect propaganda tool. He painted Antony as a man bewitched by a foreign sorceress, a traitor who had abandoned his Roman duties for a decadent Eastern queen. The stage was set for the final confrontation. The world held its breath. The fate of Rome and Egypt would be decided in a single, colossal naval battle. The year is 31 BC. The location, the waters off the coast of Actium, in Greece. On one side, you have the disciplined, well-organized fleet of Octavian. On the other, the combined, larger forces of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. It was the ultimate showdown. Antony's ships were huge, like floating fortresses, but they were slow and difficult to maneuver. Octavian's were smaller, lighter, and far more agile. As the battle raged, it became clear that Antony's brute force was no match for Octavian's superior tactics. Then, the pivotal moment happened. For reasons historians still debate, Cleopatra's squadron of 60 ships suddenly broke from the line of battle and fled. Was it a prearranged signal for a retreat? Was it an act of cowardice? Or was she trying to lure a portion of Octavian's fleet away? We may never know for sure. But what we do know is that when Mark Antony saw her flagship sailing away, he made a fatal decision. He abandoned his men, his command, and his honor, and followed her. The sight of their general deserting them shattered the morale of Antony's forces. The battle turned into a rout. Octavian had won a decisive, history-altering victory. The defeated lovers retreated to Alexandria, their dreams of an empire in ruins. They were trapped, waiting for Octavian's inevitable arrival. The mood in the city was one of despair. Antony fell into a deep depression, swinging between fits of rage and sorrow. Cleopatra, ever the pragmatist, began preparing for the end. She experimented with various poisons, seeking a quick and painless death. When Octavian's legions finally reached the gates of Alexandria, Antony received a false report that Cleopatra had already taken her own life. Devastated, he decided he could not live without her. He fell on his sword, a classic Roman way to die with honor. But the wound wasn't immediately fatal. Mortally wounded, he was carried to the mausoleum where Cleopatra had barricaded herself. In a final, tragic scene, he was hoisted up to the window and died in her arms. His last gamble, his love for her, had cost him his life. Now, Cleopatra was truly alone. Octavian captured her, intending to parade her through the streets of Rome in his triumphal procession, the ultimate humiliation for a queen. But Cleopatra would not be a trophy. She had one last card to play. The exact details of her death are shrouded in mystery and myth. The popular story, immortalized by Shakespeare, is that she had a basket of figs brought to her, with a deadly aspadon inside. She allowed the venomous snake to bite her, a death befitting an Egyptian pharaoh, a child of the goddess Isis. But some historians argue it was more likely a fast-acting poison she drank, something she had researched earlier. Whatever the method, she succeeded in robbing Octavian of his victory prize. She died on her own terms, a queen to the very end. Her son with Caesar, Caesarion, was executed by Octavian, who chillingly declared, "The Caesars are one too many." With their deaths, the Ptolemaic dynasty ended, and Egypt officially became a province of the Roman Empire. So what's the takeaway from this epic tragedy? For Cleopatra, love wasn't just about romance. In a world dominated by powerful men, her charm and intellect were her sharpest weapons. Her relationships with Caesar and Antony were strategic alliances, desperate gambles to preserve her throne and her country's independence. She was a brilliant politician, a capable ruler, and a woman who dared to challenge the power of Rome itself. She may have lost her final bet, but she won a place in history as one of its most compelling and unforgettable figures. She proved that even when the odds are stacked against you, the will of a determined ruler can change the course of an empire. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to ancient Egypt. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into history. Let me know in the comments what you think about Cleopatra's final choice. See you next time.